punctual, but we want to respect your time and start right at 6 o'clock. So welcome everybody to NEPOC's 29th Annual Economic Forecast. خوش اومدین. Tonight's event will be in English. برنامه امشب قرار به انگلیسی باشه. My name is Niku Caddy Blue and I will be your host this evening. So thank you so much for being here. If you are interested in networking with other professionals in Orange County, such as this event here, they have Mix at 6 every second Thursday of every month. So like right now, second Thursday of the month. So we have an event. So if you're interested in networking with other professionals, please join the Mix at 6 event. Also, you can go to nepoc.org for the latest news and updates. Now, I'd like to, I was going to introduce my dad, but he just he pretty much introduced himself. So he is the president of NEPOC. Dad, are you ready to take the mic for a moment, or shall I introduce our sponsors? Okay, I might just go ahead since he's figuring out the sharing. I know he knows how to do it. Dad, you with us?
Yeah, I am Babak Khatiblu, NEPOC's president. Very happy to have you all today. We are a nonprofit network of Iranian American professionals in Orange County. We are a nonprofit organization registered as 501c. We do educational and cultural networking events. We've been in existence for more than 30 years. In the late 80s, we were established. And we have done this economic forecast for 29 years. This is our 29th economic forecast. Mostly it's been through Chapman University. And I'm very happy to have everyone. So I won't take any more time of yours. And Niku, take it for the next level.
Thank you. Were you able to get the presentation so you can share that on the screen?
Yes, I got.
Fantastic.
I got the presentation, and let me see. I do a share here.
John, would you ask everyone to mute because the voice will not be heard very well?
Yes, thank you for saying that. It is just Zoom etiquette. If you could kindly keep your microphone off, that would be greatly appreciated to minimize the background noise so we can hear the speakers. So thank you. I want to actually word from our sponsor before anything else for making this event possible. Actually, we have 6 amazing sponsors this evening. So first, I'd like to say thank you to ETAP. They design electrical analysis software, which is used all over the world. ETAP was founded by Mr. Farouk Shuku, who happens to also be one of the founders of NEPOC. What a coincidence. No, it's all about relationships, right? He's always been an active supporter and participant in NEPOC, the organization. So thank you to Mr. Shuku and to ETAP. Thank you for your support. Our next sponsor is the infamous, yes, you've heard of it, is the US Bank. They are a service commercial bank, actually the 5th largest in the world. They've played a huge role in sponsoring tonight's event and have been supporters for many years. NEPOC's had a long-standing relationship with US Bank. We even have the honor of having one of their branch managers on our board of directors, Ms. Atarzadeh. So thank you so much. We are pleased to have a few of the people from US Bank here with us this evening. So we are happy to thank you again for your support and your participation. Dad, I love you, but can you mute your microphone, please?
It's not me. It's not me.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Another one of our sponsors is Sun Peak Construction. They do commercial and residential construction in Southern California. Sun Peak, I think you might have seen him earlier during the introductions. Mr. Majid Azartash is also the backbone of NEPOC. He has been a supporter for, as my dad said, more than 30 years now, which is almost as old as me. So that's old. That's a long time. Thank you so much, Mr. Azartash, for your support all of these years. Next sponsor is Kanani Advisory Group. They provide financial advice. Their firm creates retirement strategies using a variety of investment and insurance products. Thank you to David Kanani. I believe he's here with us tonight. Thank you for supporting NEPOC throughout all the years. Next, I'd like to thank Farmers and Merchant Bank. Yes, I've seen the bank around. They're actually in California, so you've probably been to them before. They're a commercial and small business bank, and Mr. Ramin Behram is the Newport Beach branch manager. I believe he's here with us tonight. He has supported NEPOC for about 20 years now. We are very grateful for Mr. Behram and Farmers and Merchant Bank. Thank you, sir. All right, our final sponsor this evening is SBG. They are a strategic business group, hence SBG. So that's easy to remember, strategic business group. Now, year after year, they participate in NEPOC's economic forecast. Their involvement and sponsorship is very much appreciated. So again, thank you so much for being here tonight. Now, if I can please ask that everybody raise their hands where I can see them up high and give a big round of applause to all of our sponsors. Thank you so much. I'm a teacher, so we do round of applause. And honestly, if it wasn't for all of our sponsors, you know, NEPOC, it's because of them that NEPOC can continue to successfully serve the community year after year. So a big, big thank you to all of our sponsors. Now, before we start the exciting presentation, let's take a quick look at what happened in 2020, in case you already forgot. Okay, I know it's just been a few weeks, but roll that video, Dad. Let's see, quick review on what happened last year. Go. Dad? Okay, I don't see the video rolling. Crickets in the audience. Dad, thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I have to do
okay,
the share
that's
again.
okay.
I have to
Yes,
do.
please.
Sorry.
Make sure you share computer sound.
Good thinking. Okay. Better now?
Yes, thank you. Perfect.
United States launched a drone strike near the Baghdad International Airport in Iraq.
We first learned that it was a missile that took down a Ukrainian airliner over Iran because of this video showing the moment of impact.
عجولانه یک فرد یه اتفاق و یک فاجعه بزرگ رو
If you have Iranian friends, if you have any friends that they lost someone in this tragedy, go to them.
The number of cases soaring just today, over 24,000 now nationwide. New Jersey today becoming the sixth state to...
Basic items like toilet paper, hand sanitizer.
Our country wasn't built to be shut down. This is not a country that was built for this. It was not built to be shut down.
It's mostly here for about 2 weeks, include names like Apple, Nike, being mentioned.
The important level here, we see that kind of numbers.
of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that video, Dad.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Now, a quick, just a side note here. If you have any questions for our speakers this evening, feel free to type them in the chat. At the end of the presentations, we'll get to as many of them as possible. There's going to be a Q&A section at the very end, so please stay for that. Now, our keynote speaker this evening, Dr. Raymond Spear, is the director of the Gary Anderson Center for Economic Research and the professor of economics at Chapman University. Dr. Spear, thank you so much for being here this evening. We are honored to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
You can share.
I may share my screen now?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Can share the screen now.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Try again.
That's all right. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Babak, do you see one slide or two?
Two. I see the dollars as well.
All right. Let me. Here
Should
we
I
go.
focus on the dollar? Oh.
And now?
Oh. One slide, only the university.
Very good. All right. Here we go. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this evening's session. I thank NIPOC for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation to you. As you all know, 2020 has been defined by COVID-19 virus. It has helped many companies and sectors of the economy, such as technology companies, supermarkets, online sellers, delivery companies like UPS and Federal Express, companies like Amazon, Zoom, and Walmart, and exercise equipment companies. On the other hand, it also has hurt many sectors of the economy and companies, such as restaurants and bars, the airlines, theme parks and museums, sports events, conferences, hotels, the oil market, hair salons, but also education and state and local governments. Well, we're starting 2021, and unfortunately, we still have to put our masks on for a few additional months. Hopefully, things will get much better by the middle of the year. Even our dogs are making fun of us. The cartoon says, it's for your own good. You have to stop touching your face. So the dog realizes it, but some people don't anyway. What I would like to do is, before I give you the forecast of the economy, the sectors, and the GDP, I would like to show you what has been the impact of COVID-19 so far on different variables. In the month of April, as people stayed at home, many were still receiving salaries. Others started receiving their paychecks of $1,200 from the federal government per person. And many of the unemployed were getting unemployment insurance benefits from the state, as well as $600 in addition per week until, actually this went on until July, from the federal government. There was also a program by the government of extending loans to small businesses, the PPP program. Now, since people stayed at home, they saved a lot and did not consume very much. And as a result, the saving rate went up to 33% in April. Okay, right here. Can you see the arrow, everybody? Or right now?
The
Okay.
personal, yeah.
All right. So we were saving $1 out of $3 in income. Now, that saving rate started declining in May, June, etc. And now it stands at around 13%. This is still much higher than the average over time, which could be 6, 7, or 8%. So as a consequence of such savings, consumption went down dramatically. This is real consumption. This is consumption when we adjust it for inflation. That is, we take out the impact of inflation. You can see that in the third quarter of 2020, the real consumption went down by more than 10% compared to the same quarter of the previous year. So, but eventually, in the fourth quarter, consumption started recuperating very quickly, and the consumption rate became only less than 4% compared to the fourth quarter of 2019. Excuse me for a second. The line turns off automatically whenever I don't move.
Oh.
Okay, U.S. retail sales. You can see that in the month of April, they declined dramatically. And in the month of May and June, retail sales started recuperating as people started going out more often. Notice that by June, the amount spent became on the sales became higher than what it was in January or at the end of 2019. And by September and October, it was substantially higher. The mortgage rate, as many of you know, has dropped dramatically. And in the month of November, it went down as low as 2.75% on average. It's still a little bit higher right now, but it is still under 3%. And we expect it to remain very low by historical standards, maybe a little bit over 3% by the end of the year. Investment spending. The gray line is residential investment. You can see here the drop in the second quarter, but then we recuperated in the third quarter, and we expect this year to be on the positive side. That is, you can see the big jump right here in the second quarter compared to the second quarter of 2020. This looks to be a very high jump, over 17%. That's because residential investment was very low in the second quarter of 2020. The red line shows non-residential investments that decline even more than the residential investment. Again, we expect that to recuperate, but not as much as a residential investment. Total investment as a whole will increase in 2021. And that's a major component of the gross domestic product. What I have here is the last 4 recessions. And I am comparing what happened to employment on a monthly basis compared to the peak employment before it started going down. In our case right now, in the 2020 recession, we are comparing it to February of 2020. Look at the 1990 recession in blue. There was a decrease in employment, but not very high, around 1.5%. And then it stayed there for a while. And after maybe around 30 months, employment went back where it was at the peak. For the 2000-2001 recession, employment went down slightly further, maybe around a little under 2%, but it took 48 months to go back where we were at the peak. look at the 07, 08, 09 recession. Unemployment dropped further than the previous two, down to more than 6%. And then around 76 months later, we went back to the peak employment. But look at 2020 recession, the COVID recession. There was a decrease after 1 month, but then a huge decrease after only 2 months, more than 14%, compared to how shallow those decreases were in previous recessions. Then there was a huge recovery even after 1 month. We added millions of new employed in the month of May. And now we are continuing to improve. So you can see how this recession differs completely from previous recessions. This is employment by employment size, and that could be interesting to some of you. The red line is the employers with 500 or more employees. Employment went down to around 9%, and then it recuperated. The smaller companies with 100 to 499 employees, employment went down further to 12%. For those of 50 to 99, and for the others, employment went down to close to 19%. And then they started recovering. What's interesting about this is that the blue line, which has the smallest number of employees from 1 to 9, those recuperated a lot faster than all the other groups, which is very interesting. Because now, well, not immediately now, but by September, the employment was down less than 4%. But for the other groups, the larger companies, they were somewhere between 7% and 4%. Excuse me, that's a very interesting phenomenon, because the small companies who have only 2 or 3 employees and they're shut down for a couple of months, it was easy for them to just call back a couple of employees. The federal deficit, what the government does and how much they spend impacts the economy heavily. You notice that the total deficit started increasing substantially by March and April. By May, it became more than $2 trillion. This is trillion with a T, okay? A trillion is 1,000 billion. And by October, the total budget deficit at the federal level, that is how much the federal government spent over and above what it collected in taxes and fees, became $3.2 trillion. This is going to be certainly much higher by the end of December. We expect, if you put all this data together, we expect real GDP to increase in all 4 quarters of this year. On a yearly basis, this is the data for real GDP. The definition of GDP is the value of everything that you produce in dollar terms of every year. A real GDP is when we take GDP and we adjust it for inflation. We take out the impact of inflation. So real GDP in 2020 decreased by 3.1%. We expected to increase by 5.7% in 2021. Many other forecasters, such as UCLA, other universities, and other professional companies and banks, their forecasts are somewhere between 3.5 and 5.2 or 5.3. Ours is a little bit on the high side. And the reason is the following. Not only did we have a big $2 trillion stimulus last year, but Congress has voted also another second stimulus of close to $1 trillion. Our expectation at the Center for Economic Research is that the Biden administration and the Democrats, now that they control the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, they are going to have more stimuli. In other words, it is quite likely that they will send not just $600 check to individuals who already have been receiving them, but they may be sending even more money later in the future. As you know, the second stimulus, now people are receiving $300 in additional unemployment insurance benefits from the federal government per week. So that is a supplement over and above the unemployment insurance that they receive from the state. And we believe that the Democratic administration may do even more in the future, and they may have even more programs to support the small business and other companies. I'm doing here for real GDP what I did for employment. That is, I'm comparing to the peak quarter when we reach the height of growth. The peak growth employment lately was the last quarter, the fourth quarter of 2019. So look at 2001 recession. It was very shallow. There was barely a decrease in real GDP. And we recovered, we reached the previous peak after 4 quarters. This is the green line. If you go to the blue line, which is the 1990 recession, real GDP went down further at less than 2%. And by 5 quarters, we went back to the peak. If you look at the 07-09 recession, the decrease was more. It was 4%, the cumulative decrease compared to the peak. And then we started recovering, but it took 14 quarters to go back to the peak that existed before the recession of 07. Look what happened in the last recession, the COVID recession. After 1 quarter, the decrease in real GDP was already higher than 2 previous recessions. By the 2nd quarter, real GDP went down by over 10%. After an additional quarter in the 3rd, we were down by only 4% compared to the peak. By the 5th quarter, that is by the 1st quarter of this year, we expect real GDP to go back where it was at the end of 2019. That is the previous peak. And as you can see, after 8 quarters, we will be way above the previous peak. You can see the shape of the recession and then recovery. It looks like a V. That's why economists refer to this recession and recovery as having a V shape, a very steep decline and a very steep expansion or recovery. If we take average employment in 2020, it's going to be approximately 8.6 million jobs less than the average that existed in 2019. That is, employment on average in 2020 would be 5.7 below 2019. For 2021, we expect the employment rate to go up by 2.2%. That is, we will be adding on average for the whole year 3.2 million jobs. As you can see, on average, we will not recover all the jobs that we have lost in 2020. It is going to take several additional years to go back to the employment that existed at the end of 2019. This is not unusual for recessions and recoveries. Real GDP recovers first. That is, companies start increasing their output before they hire more people. Then they start hiring additional workers slowly over time. Only after a long period of time that they will go back to the employment that existed before the recession started. Just to give you a break from numbers and graphs, you are going to take someday your grandchildren to a library because they're not going to know what a library is. Nobody's going to use libraries anymore. We will be able to access everything we want on the web. It's a library, honey, kind of an early version of the World Wide Web. And similarly, many of your grandchildren will not use dollar bills any longer. They will not know what the greenback is about. That's because of the digital currencies that may pop up all over the world. And that's why this lady is saying it's cash. It's kind of like a debit card. That's all what our grandchildren are going to know in the future and use. Well, now we know what happened at the national level. We can talk a little bit about the economies of California and Orange County. Payroll employment first. This is to show you what happened between January and November of last year. You can see this, I'm comparing each month to the same month of 2019. A percentage change. The decline started for Orange County, California, and the US by March. And the reason was that companies started laying off people in the last 2 weeks of March. That's why March was lower than February, which had the peak employment. Then there was a huge drop right here in April, and then practically barely a recuperation in May, and we recuperated after that.
Sign up right in highlighted color.
The blue line is California, is the US. It recuperated faster than California, which is in green, and faster than Orange County, which is in orange color. The unemployment rate, it reached 6.7% in November. It was a little lower in December, but we still do not have the percentages for California and Orange County. They will come up. They will come out in the third week of this month. For California, the unemployment rate in November was 7.9%, so that's higher than the US. In Orange County, it was only 6.4%. Mind you that the unemployment rate in Orange County was only 2.5% at the end of 2019. And also, we are doing better than the surrounding counties. Los Angeles is at 10.6%, I should say was, in November. The Inland Empire at 7.9%, and San Diego at 6.6%. It will be interesting to look at employment and what happened to it last year without including services and looking at services by themselves. Look at all employment other than services. This is the green line at the top. There was a decline in April, and then it became almost the same after that till November. But if you take services by themselves, the decline was not around 6 or 7% like for the other sectors. Mind you, the other sectors include mining, construction, manufacturing, and the government. So if you compare services to all the others, it went down by close to 18% by April, and then it recuperated. Now, if you take leisure and hospitality alone, and that's the sector that includes restaurants, bars, the theme parks, museums, if you take those, the decline was 48% by April. That is practically 1 in every 2 jobs in those sectors were lost completely. That sector certainly by November has recuperated. Mind you that by November, it has recuperated, and now at that time, the losses were around 25 or 24% of where they were at the peak. So there, the unemployment rate is still extremely high compared to other sectors. If you compare what will happen to employment in the US and in California, California is in green. The increase in employment will be almost the same, but for the whole year, we expect California's employment to increase at 2.5% and the US to increase by only 2.2%. So we are starting from a lower bottom, okay? Because you can see here how we were below the US, and that's why we will recuperate a little faster in 2021. I thought I would show you this because this is something very new that hasn't occurred in over 100 years. And that's the change in the population in California and Orange County. The data that's available is up to the middle of the year in 2020 compared to the middle of the year in 2019. California added during that period, 12 months, only 21,000 people. That's out of approximately 40 million. Percentage-wise is 0.05%. It's negligible, practically zero. This is the first time since before the 1900s. Orange County, things were even worse. We actually lost 4,000 people. Actually, for all of 2020, chances are that the losses will be even more. That tiny decrease in the population growth, or even that negative growth that's expected in the coming years, is going to be a major issue that California and Orange County have to grapple with. That's because it is going to have a major impact on employment growth and the rest of the economy. Net population outflow. In the last 11 years, the number of people who left California for other states was higher than the number of people that came to California by 1.3 million people. That's an average of 120,000 more people leaving the state than coming in. And the bulk of those were in the last few years. We expect that outflow to continue in the coming years because of the bad business climate in California and the high cost of living, as well as the high cost of housing. Building permits last year declined by around 6.6%. We expect them to increase by 10.3% in 2021. That is more than enough to make up for the losses of 2020. The single-family home price in 2020 increased by 7.5%. Because of that high increase in home prices, we expected to be only 5.1% in 2021. Mind you, that is not a small increase. This is a sizable increase. And now we move to the Orange County economy in the hope that the presentation will be half an hour as I was asked to make it. Net domestic migration. I thought, how do we compare Orange County to Riverside and San Bernardino? Riverside is in green. You could see that net domestic migration, that is the number of people who came to Riverside County from other counties than California and from other states, was on the positive side because it's above the zero line. For San Bernardino, it was on the negative side. Not very high, but negative, like 8,000 people, 9,000 people approximately. For Orange County, the situation was much worse. The net outflow to other counties in the state and other states in the US in 2020 was close to 30 or 31,000 people in 1 year, and has been negative all along since 2012. Unfortunately, we expect that number to remain high in coming several years, partly because of the high cost of living and the high cost of housing. Job growth. On average, in 2020, Orange County lost 144,000 jobs. That's an 8.6% decrease compared to 2019. We expect to recuperate 40,000 jobs in 2021. As you can see, we are not going to recuperate all the losses of 2020. So like the US and like California, it is going to take not just 1 year, but several years to go back to the peak that existed in February of 2020. The increase in Orange County, though, will be 2.6%, a little higher than California. Knowing the number of listings for condos and single-family homes for sale, and knowing the number of sold units, one can calculate how long it takes to sell everything that is for sale. Historically, that number was 5.3 months. But in the third quarter for 2020, the last quarter for which we have data, that number was only 2.4 months. That's because the number of units that are listed, that number was extremely small, even though there was quite of demand for housing. Because of that small number of listings, housing prices went up by 13 and 14% compared to the same months in 2019, in the month of September, October, November, and December. The residential permits are declined by 39% in 2020. We expect them to go up by 38% in 2021. So that's a good sign that we will recuperate a lot of what we have lost. The single-family home price will increase by 4.4% in 2021. It follows a 7.8% increase in 2020. So because of that huge increase in 2020 and having such expensive homes at the end of the year, that's why we don't expect the increase to be as high as California. 4.4 in Orange County compared to 5.1 in California. The actual price will average $926,000 in 2021. There was a decrease of 30% between 2007 and 2009, and by 2021, the increase will be 83%. Certainly, the price at the end of 2021 will be much higher than 926. The 926 is an average for the 12 months. Now, because of the increase in housing prices in 2020 and 2021, and because we are expecting the mortgage rate to be slightly higher at the end of the year compared to the beginning of the year, the affordability of purchasing homes in Orange County will be a little bit lower by the end of the year. This shows that at the beginning of this year, we expect affordability to be at 80%. That is, what does this number show? It says that in the first quarter of this year, the median family income will be only 80% of the median family income that is needed to purchase a median family home. Only 80%. By the end of the year, the median family income will be only 77.5% of what it takes to qualify to purchase a median family home. So the affordability is going to be a little bit worse by the end of the year because of the high increase in housing prices. It looks like I made it. Okay, within very close to half an hour. So I thank you very much for listening. I hope that the presentation was useful and beneficial to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shakir.
You're welcome.
That was fantastic. Please, if you could continue and stay with us till the end of the program for the Q&A session, Thank you. I'm sure the audience would appreciate having you to share more wisdom. Our next speaker is Mr. Matt Manavi. Mr. Manavi owns and operates a full business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions agency, offering business transactions and valuation services to clients. He brings over 30 years of a well-rounded industry experience, covering small startup companies up to Fortune 500 enterprises. So please help me welcome. He's been here with us the whole time, but thank you for speaking to the group, Mr. Manavi. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Dr. Spear, would you please unshare so I can share my...
Yes.
Thank you so much, Nikujan. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Well, I can, there, still sharing.
It is.
You're still sharing.
Okay,
Well,
let me stop that. Let me stop that.
There we
Okay.
Here we go. Here we go.
I got it now. Okay, now try again.
All right.
There we go. Okay. So thank you very much. I appreciate the honor that I can present some mergers and acquisitions and business sales transactions to the NEPOC friends and members. Thank you very much. So we will review the impact of COVID-19 and discuss what we might expect in 2021 relative to business transactions and acquisitions. Well, let's start with the most fundamental concept in economics, which is supply and demand. Supply in this case is the number of businesses available for sale, and demand is reflected by the total amount of money or acquisition capital chasing good businesses. Just a quick disclaimer, we do not intend to make any investment advice. I am not SEC licensed. If you have legal questions, please do advise. Work with your attorney, and any financial questions, please work with your CPA. Today, we're going to focus on privately held businesses with revenues less than $50 million. That's an annual revenue. BizBuySell is a national digital marketplace for small business transactions. This insight report that you see that BizBuySell provides is a nationally recognized economic indicator which aggregates statistics from business for sale transactions. So it's good to understand this macro decline that you see here, starting from calendar Q1 2019. When we look at the same quarter year-over-year decline, for example, you see Q1 20 to Q1 19, the number of businesses sold dropped by 11%. For Q2 to Q2, this is the pandemic impacted quarter, that number dropped by 39%. And Q3 was a good recovery back, up to maybe down to minus 16%. So to understand the overall declining sales, we need to understand what really happened and what's behind it. More than 50% of the reasons for the sale of businesses is retirement. Individuals retiring. Well, these are the baby boomers. On January 1st, 2011, the first baby boomer turned 65. We expected a flood of businesses to reach the market. Well, it didn't happen in that decade. According to Pew Research, the 2008 global recession forced many baby boomers to work till the age of 72 because they lost a lot of their nest egg, which was supposed to be their retirement. And the age of 72 meant 2018, year 2018 for us. Now, a plausible scenario is that, for that decline, is that within the years 2018 and 2019 decline may have been because the baby boomer just weren't ready to sell. They were still building equity in their business, and they were still, saving money for their retirement. Hence, there was less supply available.
Put this in your office. Huh? You're working tomorrow? Yeah. Tomorrow,
can you please mute yourself? Thank you. Now, the other aspect that we want to look at is the impact of COVID-19. When we look at calendar Q1 2020 to calendar Q2,
all I'm saying, in case
can everyone please go on mute? Thank you.
Just send that downstairs, but don't do it tonight in case somebody.
Can you mute everyone, please?
And here, this is
So we
Dan's
see
stuff.
Q2
Keep it in your drawer till the stuff comes for the Mini Cooper.
Babak, can you mute everyone, please?
Some of them I can't mute. They have to mute themselves.
No, you can. As the host, you can. So when we look at a drop from Q1 to Q2, we see that because of the pandemic, the number of businesses sold dropped by 33%. But then, as Dr. Steer showed relative to the economic recovery, that number bounced very rapidly, going from Q2 to Q3 by 39% increase. That rapid increase from Q2 to Q3 reflects a market driven by opportunity seekers to acquire good businesses that might have gone on sale. The demand for pandemic-resistant businesses drastically increased. If a business survived calendar Q2, then it went on very high demand. At that point, then the business owners were either well-positioned to profit because of their business positioning, or were forced to exit because they were going to lose the little bit of nest egg that they had. When we look at the buyer sentiment, we see that the orange line, the owner's confidence dropped to a low of 45%, going all the way back to 2013. You see this decline is obviously correlates well with the number of businesses that were sold starting calendar Q1 2019. So two factors that we suspect happened and caused this decline. One, where again, the sellers were trying to rebuild that nest egg because the economy was doing really well in 2018 and 19. They were making good money, and their goal was to collect as much money as they could. The other part that at least I heard multiple times personally from owners, they wanted to wait to see what happens with the 2020 election and maybe start thinking of selling their business in the second half of 2021. The biz buy sell confidence, they did a survey in 2020 of the business owners, and 68% of them said that they wish they had sold in 2019 because their valuation for the business dropped due to the COVID-19 impact. When we look at the demand side increased to 60%. Again, that is all-time high, going all the way back to 2013. That shows that the buyers were coming in, sitting on a lot of cash, coming from the stock market, from selling their real estate properties and whatnot, a great deal of cash chasing great businesses that were available for sale. These were the opportunity seekers. So combining all of these, then we look at the supply side, which is the baby boomers are retiring. That's a fact. 10,000 baby boomers a day are reaching age of 65. And we know that, at least based on one research, the baby boomers own over 2 million businesses, small businesses in the US. I've seen numbers much higher than that from other research organizations. We know that in the last decade, the businesses should have gone on sale and they didn't. So there is an accumulation of businesses that are about to come from the baby boomers that are now in their 70s. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the baby boomers, the business valuation dropped. And we reviewed that 60% of those sellers regretted that they had not sold their business in 2019. Now, when we look at the combined combination of these two driving forces, one is the accumulation of businesses within the last decade. Number two, the new baby boomers that are retiring 2021 and forward, our estimation is that we will have a large number of supply of businesses coming to market starting 2021. When we look at the demand side, well, we just heard from Dr. Spear, right? So GDP is going to increase. We know that the market is at all-time high, relating or supporting the wealth effect. A great deal of cash is available to many of the investors. A lot of people sold their real estate. Again, that produced a great deal of cash. The millennials, mainly many of them are entrepreneurs. They have received inheritance from their baby boomers' parents. Perhaps they cashed out on their company stock options, and they are the ones that are mainly buying businesses from the baby boomers. Now, specific to this year, 2021, we know that CARE Act 2 was approved. Part of that is an SBA loan given to the business buyers with both the principal and interest delayed for 6 months. That is huge. That provides so much leverage for the buyers to come in with some amount of cash and buy more expensive businesses with higher cash flow. Because of these two factors that we see, a huge supply coming in and a huge amount of demand because of the available capital in the market, our expectation is that 2021 will be very active in mergers and acquisitions. I thought I'd share this with you. So BizBuySell published the top 10 regions with most activity in business acquisition. Well, congratulations, we came number 2. New York and New Jersey beat us, but we came number 2 of the top 10. This is awesome. We live in one of the best places in the world. Actually, California is the 5th economy in the world. When we look at the top 3 industries in Q2, so remember, Q2 was the pandemic impacted quarter. We see that on the high end, businesses between 5 to 50 million, manufacturing was the highest, the business, the industry in the highest demand, followed by consumer goods. As we go down to the valuation, construction was the next one, up to 5 million. Again, construction between 1 and 2 million, and then consumer goods and restaurants. So again, businesses were still being transacted. Good businesses were being sold. Now, fast forward to Q3, we see that now construction and engineering are the highest industry in demand, ranging from $1 million to $50 million. I didn't know Dr. Spear would talk about the GTB growth and actually construction increasing, but it seems that the two are kind of congruent and support each other. We also see that the personal services was number 1 when we look at businesses between $500,000 to $1 million, and restaurants where the still restaurants are being sold with less than $500,000. Well, this concludes my presentation. I thank you all for allowing me to present the trends and forecast in business transactions.
Thank you, sir. We very, very much appreciate your time and your wisdom that you have brought to the table here. There are a few questions in the chat, so I don't know if who wants to answer what. You guys, I'm sure you both have insight to all of these questions. So I suppose raise your hand if you'd like to answer. All right, so we have.
If it's economic related, I'd rather Dr. Spear respond to it. He's definitely very knowledgeable.
Well,
okay, sounds good.
Let's go over some of the questions. Says the new administration is not business friendly. I'm going over the chats, everybody. If you open the chats, you'll see them. But would you say that the people living in California, the prices of housing so high will be the real estate in California? Will the real estate in California crush? Will they come down? You mentioned, Dr. Spear, that the real estate people are leaving. So do you think, you mentioned your real estate outlook. You may want to spend 30 seconds on this one.
Sure. No, we do not expect the housing market to crash at all. We are still expecting housing prices to go up. in particular because the mortgage rates are so low. So the mortgage payments at the end of the month, because of mortgage rates being under 3%, that always is a good sign for the housing market. So demand is still very high. The listings are still on the low side, and all these factors tend to push prices upward for housing and not downward.
Okay. The next question is rather technical from Saeed Ghafari. Dr. Sweer, are the cost of services included in the valuation of GDP?
Yes, the GDP is the value of all goods and services that are produced in a particular quarter or year, depending on the, so yes, all services are part of GDP. So when we go and consult an accountant, or we get a lawyer, or when we get a haircut, or we do our nails, so all of these are part of the gross domestic product.
Okay. Another question is the impact of the multiple trillion dollar being dumped in the economy on the hopes of stimulating the economy, in particular our long-term inflation rate. So all this stimulus, do they have, what do you see about that connecting to the long-term inflation?
Okay. It is true that the budget deficits at the level of $3.2 to $3.5 trillion in 1 year, like it was in 2020, and it's still going to be extremely high deficit in 2021. That stimulates demand for goods and services by the public and by the government and by businesses. So the increase in demand will certainly push prices upward. I didn't show you anything about inflation, but the inflation rate went down to 0.2% back in May of last year. Right now, it stands at 1.2%. Okay, so we expect the inflation rate to get higher than that by the end of the year. Okay. The role of the Federal Reserve when it comes to inflation becomes extremely important. The Federal Reserve has changed its policy back at the end of 2020. That is, it wanted the inflation rate to go up to 2%, and it was not able to reach the 2% level since 2008. That is, since the recession of 2008 to 2009. They said that they wanted it to reach 2%. Then at the end of last year, they said they will allow it to go above 2% in order to make up for some of the time when it was below 2%. So we should not be surprised if the inflation rate over time goes above the 2% level. I don't think that we will get to that by the end of this year, but when the money supply increases by a very large percentage, as it did last year, by 30% or more, and what we expect it to go up again this year because the Federal Reserve is pumping so much money in the economy, we expect inflation to result later on. So prices will be higher by the end of this year. It's to be seen how much higher, over 2%, the Federal Reserve would allow it to go.
Quick, couple of quick questions. Mortgage rates, do you expect them to stay low in 2021?
Yes, we expect them to go probably just a little bit higher than 3%. The mortgage rate moved together with the 10-year Treasury bill rate. The Treasury notes have increased, the yield has increased from 0.9% in the last quarter to 1.1% right now in the last couple of weeks. It might go even a little bit higher by the end of the year. And as a result, the mortgage rate may end up being a little bit higher than 3%. But it is going to remain on the very low side, and that's why mortgage rate will continue to support housing prices.
What about building permits? That's a lot of interest for construction related and real estate people. Do you expect the building rates to to go up sharply in 2021?
Yes, I showed you a slide on the number of permits that we expect, like in Orange County as well as California, that will be drawn. So whether California, Orange County, or nationwide, the residential sector is going to do well, partly because of the increase in housing prices. Certainly that makes it a little more expensive for some people because housing prices are increasing at the same time, but the housing market nationwide will be strong in 2021.
Okay, I think we
There was a private message sent here from Ms. Abby Hosseini asking about the economy under Mr. Biden's presidency.
No.
Well, as I mentioned before, maybe I didn't say that. Democratic administrations are very well known about spending more and telling us we will cut expenditures later on, but they really never do. And they say we will not increase taxes, but they always do. Chances are the Biden administration will increase the top tax rates on the rich. When I say rich, I don't mean those who are in the 25% bracket, but those who are in the 35 and 37% brackets. So those will pay higher taxes. Chances are they're going to increase the business tax rate for corporations. It stands now at around 21%. There's a good likelihood that will push it up to 28% soon. But the additional expenditures that they will undertake now that they control both the House of Representatives as well as the Senate, and the high level of expenditures by the Democratic administration that's expected, is going to stimulate demand, okay? And as a result, the economy is going to do quite well.
Very well. What about stock market, sir?
Well, it's time to go home. Aren't you guys hungry?
That is your last question, stock market.
Okay, there is a reason why we don't forecast the stock market. Is because you are certain to be wrong. Okay? So here's what I have to say about it. The main reason why the stock market recuperated so quickly after the month of March is because the interest rates are extremely low. That's the main reason. It happened before, it happens all the time. Whenever interest rates are very low, people look at different investments in order to have a certain return. As you all know, if you have some money in a checking account, you are not getting any interest at all. If you have it in a saving account, even if you freeze your money in a CD for 2 or 3 years, if you're lucky, you're getting 0.3, 0.4%. So when interest rates are extremely low, people start taking more risk with the money that they have. And now, because the Federal Reserve has pumped so much money in the market, because checking accounts of both companies as well as individuals have more than 30% more money than in 2019. And they're going to have even much more in 2021. That is going to stimulate demand for stocks and continue to do so. Okay, so that search for a return means that people are willing to take more risk because stocks are more risky than investing your money in bonds or putting them in CDs or your saving account. As long as the earnings to price ratio in the Standard & Poor, which is now around 3%, that as long as it is 2% or 1.8% or more above the 10-year yield, which is now around 1.1%, the market will continue to do well. Okay, that is called the premium of stocks over and above the 10-year note. Okay, so you always want a little more than the 10-year note in order to pay for the additional risk that you are taking. Okay, So if the 10-year note now is paying 1.1%, as long as the earnings to price ratio is above 2.9, the market will continue to do well. And since we expect the Federal Reserve to keep short-term interest rates are close to zero, remember the short-term rate now is 0.1% for the federal funds rate. And the medium term, the 10-year is also very low historically. We expect it to be a little bit higher, but not a lot higher, because the Federal Reserve said they're going to continue to buy more and more bonds to keep the economy and stimulate it. So we expect the stock market to do fine.
Dr. Sphere, I want to thank you so much. I said last question, but somebody asked about oil. I could not let that one go.
That's
What's
all right.
going to happen to oil?
Yeah. You know, the oil market has already recuperated a lot. In last year, at the beginning of the year, and even the end of the year, it was approximately $45 per barrel for the Brent, the Texas. For the Texas Intermediate. Now it is higher than that. As some of you, if you follow the oil market, Saudi Arabia decided to cut its exports and its production by 1 million barrels a day compared to what it did at the end of last year. It also reached an agreement, a new agreement with Russia and other non-OPEC countries, as well as OPEC countries, to keep the total output and total exports down in order to support prices. And that's why the price of a barrel of oil now for the Texas Intermediate is around $53. So the price already has gone up, and it is expected to go probably a little bit higher by the end of the year and definitely next year. So as the economy improves, not only in the United States, but we expect it to improve in China, in India, and in Western countries like Japan, United Kingdom, France, and Germany, and European Union in general. As economies improve, the demand for oil increases. And as long as OPEC and other producers keep the output restrained, they don't go crazy in increasing their output, then the price of oil will continue to go up.
Okay.
Not by a huge percentage, but it will continue slight increase over time.
It will hold its price. Thank you so much, Dr. Sphere.
You're welcome.
If you, I know you're.
I did see a question in the chat.
One last question for Matt.
All right.
What about?
I'm gonna charge Matt from now on. Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Sphere, I'm gonna buy you a cello kebab.
Okay.
Is it a good time to buy a restaurant, a fast food franchise?
Oh, fast food franchise. Okay, I saw the chat. So real quickly, I know we're out of time. Please consider the reality of our time. If you want to buy a restaurant, a food business, make sure it does have a drive-through. Make sure it does have outside seating, because we're going to be in this condition for a while. However, that said, you know, please consider the franchise itself and the type of food. Not every franchisor, not all the franchises are created equally. So you really want to do your homework and make sure that when you pay someone, you're getting that brand name and the support that you deserve.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for joining us this evening for NEPOC's famous annual wonderful sponsored event for this evening. I appreciate our speakers, both of you, everyone who joined us. Please, everybody, stay safe. Shab Bekhair. Have a wonderful evening.
I was going to put the list of the sponsors.
Thank you, Baba.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I was going to put
55 participants. Thank you all. Fantastic event.
I was going to put the list of sponsors down there too as well.
Yes.
Hold on, let me see how we're going to do this.
Before leaving.
Shab Shama Bekhair.
Shab Bekhair.
Dance at the end of the party.